let the Harn go back to its harvesting. By noon Ed was getting pretty stiff sitting in the tree. He climbed down and eased over toward the stump, watching where he set his feet. He was pretty sure the snake-proof pants would stop the stingers, but he saw no point in putting them to the test until he had to. About 50 yards away he got a good view, and it did look like there might be a sizable hole under the stump. He studied it carefully with the glasses. There was a smooth-beaten mound in front, and exposed roots were worn slick. As he got closer, he noticed an unpleasant smell, and near the mouth of the den he got a sudden whiff that almost gagged him. A sour, acid, carrion stink like a buzzard's nest. He moved back a little. The hole was wide and fairly high, 2 or 3 feet, but too dark to see back into. Still, he had a sense of something stirring there not too far back. Ed had considerable respect for caves and dens with unseen occupants. He had once helped carry in the bodies of 2 men who had poked a stick into a spring grizzly's den. At the same time, he wanted pretty badly to know what was in there. He suspected there was a good deal more than what he had already seen. The bug gun loaded with tobacco juice was in his pack, and a flashlight, a small light one designed for a lady's purse which he always carried when away from camp. He got them out and leaned his rifle against a root sticking out just at the left of the den. Taking the bug gun in his left hand and the flashlight in his right, he stooped over to shine the light in, keeping as well clear of the entrance as possible. All in all, he must have got about a 5-second look, which is a lot longer than it sounds when things are happening. His first impression was a jumble, eyes, scurrying movement, and bulk. Then things started to shape up. About 10 feet back from the entrance was a huge, flattish, naked, scabrous bulk, pimpled with finger-sized teats. Clustered around and behind this were a tangle of slinging units, carrier units, observation units. Some had their mouths fixed to teats. For a long second or two the scene stayed frozen. Then the front edge of the bulk split and began to gape. Ed found himself looking down a manhole-sized gullet into a shallow puddle of slime with bits of bone sticking up here and there. Toward the near end a soggy mass of fur that might have been the rabbit seemed to be visibly melting down. At the same moment the tangle of lesser monsters sorted themselves out and a wave of stingers came boiling out at him. Ed dropped the flashlight, gave 2 mighty pumps of the bug gun, and jumped clear of the entrance. For a moment the den mouth boiled with stingers, hissing and bucking in agony. Ed sprayed them heavily again, snatched up his rifle, and ran, looking back over his shoulder. The stingers showed no inclination to follow, though. The tobacco juice seemed to be keeping them well occupied for the moment. Halfway home, Ed had to stop and rest for a moment while he took a spell of shuddering and gagging as a sudden picture of the slimy gullet came into his mind, with Ed Brown laying where the rabbit had been, melting down into a stinking soup of bones and gobbets of flesh. When he got to the hole, his arrangement of tin cans, traps, and tobacco juice no longer looked nearly as secure as it had. He got his axe and cut 2 stout posts, framing the hole, built a stout slab door, and hung it from them. Then he drove stakes close together at the threshold, to foil any attempts to dig under, and trimmed a sill tight to the door. His feeling in this matter, as it happened, was sound. The Harn was beginning to develop a strong dislike for Ed Brown. 3 of its stinging units were dead, and most of the rest were in poor shape, thanks to the tobacco spray. It had got a little whiff of the stuff itself, not enough to do any serious damage ordinarily, but right now, so close to swarming time, Ed was going to have to go. So far in this world, the Harn had needed only the 3 basic types of mobile units. There were other standard types, however, for dealing with more complicated situations. As it happened, a couple of carrier embryos were at just about the right stage. With a little forcing, they could be brought on in not too long a time. Meanwhile, the Harn would do what it could with the material available. When Ed came through the next day to set his snares, the Harn was prepared to test his snake-proof pants. They held, which was disconcerting to the Harn, but it was a hard creature to convince, once thoroughly aroused. Ed was not too sure of how well the pants would stand up to persistent assaults himself. After the third ambush, he took to spraying suspicious-looking spots with tobacco juice. He shot 2 more stingers in this way, but it slowed him up quite a bit. It took him all day to make 4 sets. In the next 3 days, he made a dozen sets and caught 2 carriers. Then, the 4th day, as he adjusted a snare, a seeming root suddenly came to life and slashed at his hand. He was wearing gloves to keep his scent from the snares, and the fang caught the glove and just grazed the ball of his left thumb. The hatchet he had been using to cut a toggle was lying by his knee. He snatched it up and chopped the stinger before it could strike again, then yanked off the glove and looked at his hand. A thin scratch, beaded with drops of blood, showed on the flesh. Unhesitatingly, he drew the razor edge of the hatchet across it, sucked and spat again and again. Then he started for home. He barely made it. By the time he got to the hole, he was a very sick man. He latched the door, stumbled into the cabin, and fell on the bed. It was several days before he was able to be about again, his hand still partly paralyzed. During that time, the situation changed. The Harn took the offensive. Ed's first notice of this was a rhythmic crashing against the cabin. He managed to crawl to where he could see the gate he had built to block the hole into the other world. It was shaking from repeated batterings from the other side. Dragging his rifle with his good hand, he scrabbled down to where he could see through the chinks in the slab door. 2 of the carrier units were there, taking turns slamming their full weight against it. He had built that gate skookum, but not to take something like that. He noted carefully where they were hitting it, then backed up 20 feet and laid the .450 across a log. He let them hit the door twice more to get the timing before he loosed off a shot at the moment of impact. The battering stopped abruptly, and through the chinks he could see a bulk piled against the gate. For a while there was no more action. Then, after a few tentative butts at the door, the battering started again. This time Ed wasn't so lucky. The battering stopped when he fired, but he got an impression that the carrier ran off. He thought he might have hit it, but not mortally. In an hour or so the Harn was back, and it kept coming back. Ed began to worry about his ammunition, which was not unlimited. Ordinarily, 2 or 3 boxes lasted him through the winter. He got his .30-06, for which he had a sugar sack full of military ammunition. The light full-patch stuff did not have the discouraging effect of the .450, though, and he had to shoot a lot oftener. Another thing, he wasn't getting any rest, which was bad in his already weakened condition. Every time he dozed off, the battering would start again, and he would have to wake up and snap a few shots through the door. He held pretty much on one spot, not wanting to shoot the door to pieces, but the Harn noticed this and started hitting the door in other places. The second day of the attack, the door came down. It had been pretty shaky for some time, and Ed had got the cabin ready for a siege, filling butter kegs with water and nailing up the windows. As the Harn poured through, he shot several and then broke for the cabin. A carrier ran at him full tilt, bent on bowling him over. Once off his feet, he would have been easy meat for one of the stingers. He sidestepped, swung his shotgun up in one hand, he had kept it handy for the close fighting, and blew the carrier's spine in half. He had to kick it aside to slam the cabin door. For a few minutes, then, things were pretty hectic. Ed went from one to another of the loopholes he had cut, blasting first with a shotgun as the Harn crowded around, then using the .30 as they grew more cautious. After the first rush, it was obvious to the Harn that the cabin was going to be a tough nut to crack. On the other hand, there was no rush about it either. Necessarily, it had let its hunting go the last several days while